I'm Gus Denhard, the Executive Director of Early Music Seattle. I'd like to welcome you to Coming Together Music of Moravia. It was my personal pleasure to witness the joy that came out of this production as these artists got together for the first time since March 2020 to play music together. If you enjoy this performance, please consider visiting our website, earlymusicseattle.org, and make a donation in support of our work. Thank you for spending this time with us tonight.
You already have this flair, and you don't have to do any extra because you're the king. That kind of another go. That's what I'm thinking.
I know the feeling after our first rehearsal this morning. It was so open to, just really savoring this opportunity that we get to play music together again.
This time, can we try it nice and relaxed going into 87?
Oh, okay.
Just a little more, just to give me that much more space to get the notes in, you know?
Yep.
Seeing the light and smelling the room, I got a little verklempt there for a second, I gotta say. I think it's perhaps something that we take for granted. When we all sort of went into hiding earlier this year, suddenly not only was I not making music, but I also was not seeing my friends and my artistic family.
I like that. Takes the pressure off. It's all about me.
I think we've all been cooped up in ourselves and in our little environments and not able to make music. And musicians, a lot of times, feel very strongly personally connected to the identity of being a musician, to the process of making music. And to not get to go out and be with people and do that is this weird blow to who you are.
Are we 87, I think, on my...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay, I'll get into it, but you don't have to take it. There's something about playing with somebody else that brings more to the music than you can have even by yourself. It's kind of like opera. Opera, you have the text, you have the singing, and you have the instrumental music and the acting. And all of those coming together make it so much more. It's more than the sum of its parts.
You could switch to 1/8 in places, couldn't I? Just this section. Those two kind of chunky. Maybe it doesn't sound that way.
It's such a gift to be able to play with other musicians and create this fabulous music together, to take something from music from the 17th century and bring it into the 21st century, and especially to be bringing it into this time where we're all needing our souls to be nourished, and which music does. The trumpet being used as a signaling device is really connected to the historical function of the instrument and how it was used not just to make music in church, for example, but it was used to announce royalty or certain dignitaries. Trumpets were also really important parts of the music that was played at table, the entertainment, basically. And when we look at the music from this program,
the Bieber duet that I will be joined with my colleague on an oboe instead of a trumpet. But what is wonderful is that we can still deliver that same message and the historical connection of the trumpet during this time period. For this program of Moravian music, we get to practice some of our Czech pronunciation. So one of the composers is named Pavel Vevanovsky. So you might want to say that to yourself, Vevanovsky. It's a great name to say. He worked at a music archive that was connected to the archbishopry that was based in Olomouc, so you could say that as well, Olomouc. And the residence of the bishop was actually in Kroměříž, another great word to say, Kroměříž. So the connection of all of the pieces on this program is that the composers or the specific pieces, sometimes both, were all connected somehow to this music archive in Kroměříž. Okay, so Vevanovsky was in charge of taking care of the music archive at Kroměříž. And the bishop named Karl II von Liechtenstein-Kastelkorn, Karl was appointed bishop of Kroměříž and Olomouc in 1664, and it was his mission to rebuild the culture of the region. And of course, you can't rebuild the culture of a region without having a well-appointed capella. And so it was really important to him to make connections with musicians who would supply music to this archive.
fantastical style. Stilus fantasticus. It's one of the great iconic compositional styles of the Baroque era. Started out in Italy and made its way out across Europe from there. And the Moravian Bohemian composers are among some of the finest examples that we have from later in the century. The cuckoo piece that I'm playing today is such a fantastic example because it really, you know, it's got all of these little episodes that sort of have these different characters, and there's a lot of virtuosity, and it's not really bound by any sort of specific form. It's just these flights of fancy, and Schmelzer has this wonderful way of painting a picture of this cuckoo bird doing God knows what was going on in his brain, but it's colorful, virtuosic, fun music to play and to listen to. Let me show you how to make a recorder sound like a cuckoo, and this is Schmelzer's idea of how a recorder can sound like a cuckoo. So pretty simple. The very beginning of the piece starts with a sort of a rolling bass line, and then the recorder comes in. And then from there, Schmelzer spins out a melody. And this cuckoo comes back to punctuate at various points throughout the piece.
to spend your evening with us. Please consider making a donation by going to the homepage of our website, clicking on the donate button. It's very easy to do, and we greatly appreciate it. And for those of you in the audience that have donated, thank you so much for your generosity. And now I'm so pleased to welcome members from the Seattle Baroque Orchestra, who you have just been watching in this wonderful performance. And they have graciously come on to join us to answer any questions you would like to ask them. And so you can do that by just typing them into the chat box. I will be monitoring it and be happy to ask them to our artists for you. So if you just want to go ahead and do that now, I'm going to take a look and see if we have any coming in. Actually, here's one for Chris. What is it? And actually, let me introduce our artists. I'm sorry. We have Chris Quapis with us, and Curtis Foster and Jolande Dupree. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, just making sure we're all connected. So I do have a question for you, Chris, that came in. What is it about the trumpet that intrigues you and has inspired you to devote yourself to playing it?
Well, so many things. When I was young, I started out on a modern trumpet with valves, and I mostly liked the sound of it, and I liked how you could articulate much like how you speak, and I think that is true today. One of the things I love the most about playing Baroque trumpet, though, is that it's a huge challenge, and that that really keeps me inspired for sure because of its sheer difficulty. But I also like how it can really blend, and it can be a solo voice. It has such great versatility, and that's partly what I love about it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Great, thank you. And here's one that's come in for Curtis. How often do you have to replace the reed on your oboe, and what exactly is it made of?
Well, that's a great question. I'm constantly making oboe reeds, actually. A little less this year than I typically would, but usually I'm making reeds just about every day. And the thing is that you want to always have a really good reed to play on. And since reeds have lifespans, they have to be broken in, and then they have sort of an optimum period, and then they may change and become good in a different way, and then eventually they just sort of die. And you have to catch a reed that's in that optimum period to play it in public, and that's how you create your own sound. So it's something I have to do every day, and playing Baroque oboe means I have to play actually a lot of different oboes: oboe d'amore, oboe di caccia, classical oboe. I have to make reeds for all of these instruments. They all take different reeds.
Wow.
And the reeds themselves, the cane material, it's actually a swamp weed that grows all over the places in subtropical climates, grows in Southern California, grows in China. The best of it comes from the south of France, and it looks like bamboo basically, and they harvest it and they dry it for at least a few months, preferably for a couple of years, and then you process it and make it into a reed.
Oh wow, that's quite a process for sure.
It is, yes.
A labor of love.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So Jolande, here's one for you. What event, experience, or person provided the spark that ignited your love of music and the harpsichord?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, and a kind of a complex answer, because I'd say there were several people that were instrumental, pardon the pun, in bringing me to music and to the harpsichord. Both my parents were musicians. My mother, who's still alive and a musician at age 93, she inspired me. She was a pianist and singer, and and we were always involved in music. And when I was about 16, I think, we belonged to a church. This was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where they performed the Bach St. Matthew Passion just about every year. And I always sang in the children's chorale in the first movement. And one year, the organist, choir director said, here's a tuning hammer. There's a harpsichord over there. You're going to play the harpsichord this year. And that was kind of the beginning. And so I'd say it was certain people who just had faith in that I could take the ball and run with it. And I had been playing piano up until that point. And then many other people who were inspirations along the way. So it just it happened in that way.
Oh, wonderful. I'm going to see if there's any others coming in. So here's one that looks like any one of you can answer it, and we have time for you each to answer it if you'd like to. What are some of the unexpected gifts that this time of COVID has offered you as musicians?
Who would like to start?
I'll start. Why not? That's, you have to sort of look for the gifts in this day and age, during this period, and you have to sort of create them for yourself. So the one thing is that you have a lot of time on your hands to do projects that you have maybe thought about doing for years and that you just didn't have time to do. So for me, one thing I've been working on is my recorder playing, actually. I play a fair amount of it, but I don't play a lot of real solo repertoire. I do a lot of orchestral doubling, that sort of thing. So this has been a great opportunity for me to work on that, and working on some 19th century oboes that I don't really have a chance to play around with much, because I've got to figure out the reeds for those. So those have been my projects.
Joanne, Chris, either one of you would like to answer?
I'll go next. I think one of the gifts for me has been to take some time to step away from music and do more in terms of being in nature and taking in the world, the natural world, and being inspired by that, and then coming back to music and planning perhaps a new recording soon, and just looking at repertoire in a different way with fresh eyes after taking some time off. And also, I've really been enjoying continuing to teach via Zoom or FaceTime, which is not the best way for the harpsichord sound to come across, but it's at least kept me connected with my students, whom I really enjoy.
Yeah, thank you. And Chris?
Well, a few things that have been keeping me busy. I'm used to being on the road so much. So it's actually been a real gift to spend more time at home. And at home, I also have a bit of an art studio, and I've been spending a good amount of time working on some paintings, some commissions, and I took an online class for painting that was really, really useful. And I've also enjoyed really getting super nerdy and joining some other super nerd friends and having a weekly Bach cantata discussion on Zoom with colleagues around the country, and that has been incredible because it's given some focus on the things that I want to research for the week, and I also get an opportunity to look at some cantatas that maybe perhaps don't have trumpet parts, but are still lovely, surprisingly enough. But yeah, it's been a time, and like Curtis said, I think you have to make your own opportunities, just like we always do as musicians. There's a lot of figuring out what what do you want to focus on during this time?
Yeah. And there is a question that's come in, another one that's come in for you, Chris, from Daniel. And he asks, how do you modulate the tones on this trumpet? Is it all, and I may mispronounce this, so correct me if I'm wrong, embouchure?
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah, that's embouchure. And hi there, Dan. Thanks for joining. Dan is one of my oldest friends in the world. We went to high school together.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, terrorized our band.
Oh, we're breaking up a little bit, Chris.
Perfect. We terrorized our band director on a daily basis. So when we talk about how to change pitches on a trumpet without valves, yeah, the embouchure is definitely involved, and the embouchure is the muscles and the lips, you know, in the general region of where the mouthpiece touches your face. But I like to say that it's not mostly with the lips, it's really mostly with your mind. In that it's so much like singing, and I find myself really trying to avoid thinking about how my body does it, and I just try to sing the pitch really strongly in my head, and of course practice those pathways a ton, so that really the physical part of playing isn't even part of the process or the part of the inner discussion of my mind. It's just really singing, and hopefully that's what comes out of the bell. It is a matter of practicing. I like to say it's building a super highway between your mind and body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a lot like that.
Oh, wow, interesting. Well, it looks like that's what I have coming in for now. So I think we will get back to the rest of our program for everyone to enjoy. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I believe we're going to have another opportunity to talk with all of you after the conclusion of the concert. So everyone, please stay tuned in. After the concert concludes, we'll have another Q&A with our artists, so you'll have another opportunity to ask questions and enjoy the second half of the performance. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. The bassoon was known at the time as an instrument that could fill a lot of different roles, that kind of could blend with anything. It was this kind of musical chameleon. So it was an excellent instrument for playing with voices or with string instruments or with other wind instruments. It could play outdoors, it could play indoors. So being able to do all of those different things to get outside of kind of the standard role of the bassoon in the modern symphony orchestra, which has a very particular kind of sound and color, is really a joy to be able to do all those different things and to be able to play in all those different contexts. So in this concert, I really get to play two important roles. One as a solo voice in the Schmelzer, which is really an independent and equal voice to the violin in that piece, and then also in the other pieces, the continuo role. And that's an interesting duality to get to play with as a bassoonist, that you have to do these two things. And you might think, you probably would think, that
being the soloist is the harder role, right? You have more notes, it's more flashy, you're more under the spotlight. But I find it's actually really the opposite. That playing continuo is really the more difficult task for a couple of reasons. One, as a continuo player, in just like the nuts and bolts of it, you much more often are playing in unison with another bass voice. And so you're playing exactly the same pitches at the same time, so you have to be really in tune with the other bass voice, you have to be really exactly together, and that kind of coordination has its own kind of difficulty that if you're a soloist, you're just up there, you know, throwing notes out. It's not necessarily so important that those things are there. But also, playing a foundational role, playing a supportive role, is something that's often kind of unsung, but is really challenging. Being a voice in the texture that doesn't assert itself, but rather lifts up the other voices, is something that I enjoy doing, not only because of the difficulty of it, but of course, like, it's fun to support your colleagues, right? So being that kind of voice is a really interesting part of what I get to do, and is really the more difficult task, I find. So the Schmelzer Sonata, I think, is fun for a lot of different reasons, but I really love the sort of oafish opening of the piece. The bassoon just comes in, and I think that it's just this kind of comic character. So it's not the high drama of like the opera seria, you know, from the time. This is buffa. This is like a comic character entering the stage. So I think that's a really fun part of this piece.
There were two primary keyboard instruments, of course, the harpsichord and the organ, and to some degree in some parts of the Germanic countries, clavichords. The origins of these instruments, when we think about it, it goes way back. I mean, the organ itself, the first example of a quasi-organ we have is from the 3rd century BC in ancient Greece. It was called a hydraulis, and it used water to create pressure to push the air through what I assume were pipes. And then the harpsichord, we have early depictions going back to the 1430s. But the role of the harpsichord in particular was really varied. You could divide it between the court, where it would be used for royal celebrations, to accompany instruments, play for dances, well, operas, for example, other festivities. In the churches and cathedrals and monasteries, of course, the organ was used primarily, and as an instrument to accompany various parts of the services. Alessandro Poglietti was quite an amazing composer in the Italian style. He spent most of his life in Vienna working for Leopold I, and he was one of Leopold's favorite composers. He wrote music that was very colorful and very Italian in style. And there was something that the Italians actually first started at the end of the 16th century in the organ toccatas, which we called stilus fantasticus, the fantastic style. And that was a very improvisatory style, but very free, very colorful, no rules in terms of, oh, well, you have to follow this rhythm or this musical text or whatever. And that style crept north into Germany, and so into this repertoire that we're playing, this Moravian music.
We do not know if Bieber was the student of Schmelzer. Bieber was younger. The first collection of violin sonatas published in the German-speaking lands were Schmelzer's. They're quite fantastical and fun, I would say, but they're not as virtuosic in some ways as Bieber's. So the Bieber Passacaglia, it is a Passacaglia, so there's this repeated descending tetrachord that goes through the entire piece. And just I have to keep that in mind, that it's going throughout the entire piece. It's like a heartbeat in a way. And so the Passacaglia is the final sonata in this collection, the Rosary sonatas that Bieber composed. So each of these sonatas depicts a different mystery of the Rosary, and at that time there were 15. So the Passacaglia, the 16th, is not one of the rosaries. It is a depiction of the guardian angel. And so if you think of the Passacaglia tetrachord that goes throughout the entire piece, you can think of it as this guardian angel who is always with you, no matter what is happening, where you are, always you have a guardian angel watching over you.
No offense to trumpet players out there, but people don't normally think of the trumpet as being the first choice as a chamber instrument, But I think what Finger has done so spectacularly is shown that actually the trumpet is a virtuoso instrument.
I get to showcase the wide variety of articulation and the expressive potential of the trumpet.
I love playing these finger sonatas, this particular one that we're doing for oboe, violin, trumpet, and continuo. Every instrument gets an opportunity to speak in their own voice. Various points, especially in the big outer movements where everybody is playing together, we have these motives and we pass them around, and we get to hear what does it sound like on trumpet, what does it sound like on violin, what does it sound like on oboe, and what does it sound like when you put them all together and in different combinations.
It reminds me of how our parts are really like having a conversation. We're exploring different sounds and ideas, finding what we have in common, and also celebrating our differences. And I think that's a lot about the whole mission of this project of coming together, and how we as musicians and people want to look for ways that we can find this common ground. It's not just the loudest voice who gets to make decisions, but it's more a reflection of everyone's voices coming together toward a common goal.
So Early Music Seattle has been very much devoted to presenting early music, but we've been, over the years, like looking for the grand scale of things, and we're always pushed to have more musicians on stage. We can't bring large ensembles together. We can't bring vocal forces together, a full Baroque orchestra. Chamber music actually functions fairly well right now. Of course, the magic behind chamber music, and what's occurring to me this week as I listen to these rehearsals and sessions go on, is the personal connections that I have to admit I don't always see.
So chamber music in the best of times is a great way to connect with other people because you make decisions collectively, you create a sound together, and you shape a musical experience together as a close family, basically.
Making music with other people matters to me because that's the only way to do it, right? I often get asked, oh, you play music, that's so cool, can you play a piece? And I mean, there are pieces for solo bassoon, but what we do is incomplete without other people.
It's like being a painter and you have lots of different colors of red, and at home when you're practicing by yourself, you may think, oh yes, this is just the right shade, this is exactly what I want to say. But then when you're in the company of your colleagues, you may decide, you know what, it's actually orange. I don't think it's red at all.
We feed off of each other. It's harder being so spaced out because usually we'd be closer together, and I think all of us were feeling that lack this time. But even with the greater space, we could still see each other and play together, and you might phrase something differently than you would, or even differently than you ever have before, because in the moment you just go with it.
So something that I find about playing chamber music that I think is really relevant is the notion of setting aside your ego. You have to be willing to set that aside and work with people, which doesn't mean that you don't have opinions, but you want to set aside that impulse that we all have to, but I think, that kind of thing. Get that out of there.
Music not only makes us slow down and be present in the moment and experience this incredible spiritual art, but it also is something we can be connected together in it, and that's very, very important.
So right now we're living in a time where we're mostly shouting at each other, often over the internet, right? So this is a little bit of a taste of the world we maybe need to make.
We have an opportunity to document chamber music in a way that's yet more intimate than, if we were doing it in a concert hall, for instance, and the audience is back over there. Here, not only are we together, but the audience is right in there in the thick of it with us and gets to see it from our perspective. So I hope that that's something that those of you watching out there will really click into and get something out of, because we've certainly enjoyed doing this here together.
Well, hello, everyone. We're back. And just wanted to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Hope you enjoyed this performance. And I'm back with some more of our Seattle Baroque Orchestra musicians who you just viewed that beautiful performance by. And so if you have any questions that you would like to ask them, I would be happy to put them to our artists. And we have Christine Wilkinson Beckman joining us now also. So welcome, Christine. Thanks for coming to see us tonight. So I do have a question for you. What is your favorite thing to do when you are not playing music?
Oh, probably. Well, let's see. Drink tea.
Okay. Any particular?
If I have any downtime, reading a book and drinking some tea is wonderful. But I do have 2 young children at home, and so I don't have a lot of that at the moment. A lot of tea, but not so much downtime with reading.
And here's a question that's actually come in that any of you can answer. What is the funniest moment you have ever experienced during a live performance? Funniest.
The funniest or the finest? Funniest. Oh.
And maybe, I mean, it could also be something that was maybe unexpected, I would think, you know, that because you know how things happen in live performances, you never know quite what to expect.
I guess we block all those out.
It's hard to think of something that's not embarrassing.
Well, then tell us an embarrassing something. No. Probably could be funny if you're willing to share. That is, I'm not going to force you.
I think we're all drawing a blank.
Okay, not a problem. All right, here's another one all of you can answer. Who do you consider to be your greatest music hero and why? Anyone jump in?
Again, that's a little tough.
I guess tough too, because I don't know. I feel like we probably maybe we would say a composer, or maybe we would mention our colleagues. Like, I feel like
I think any of those would answer the question. Absolutely.
Yeah, but think about if you asked us this question, you know, when we were in high school or something, we could probably come up with a huge list.
Right.
I think as we're I don't know, as we age, as it were, I don't know, we sort of have a different kind of relationship with the music that we make, and I don't know, I feel like you know, it's sort of like they say about your children, you know, your concerts they're all, you love them all equally, even if weird things happen that you don't remember when someone asks later.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit like somebody asking, well, who's your favorite composer?
Right.
And the answer is, you know, well, the composer that I'm playing today. You know, it's
right.
I'll give you a different answer every day.
Of course, sure. That makes complete sense. Absolutely. So here's another question that probably all of you could answer. What gifts does early music offer in these modern times? And how can it be kept alive to inspire a new generation of enthusiasts?
So it's a 2-part question. I think I'm going to answer the second part first.
Okay.
How can it be kept alive? Just by playing it, and by playing it because you love it. I don't think we have to do anything special to make it more accessible or more, I don't mean accessible, more intelligible to younger people. The younger generations will come to it because we play it, if they're going to be, if they have the opportunity to hear it. I don't think we need to do anything, and we should certainly make the opportunity greater so that more people have access to it. But I don't think we need to change the way we do it so that we encourage other people to join. If we water down what we do in the hopes of making more people like it, I think we'll actually lose audience. We'll lose the interest, and especially lose the interest of the young people who can sniff out insincerity really, really easily. And what was the first part of the question?
The first part of the question is, what gifts does early music offer to us in these modern times?
I think it offers us an opportunity to step back and to enter a different world in a way. Our world is so busy and so frantic, frenetic because of all of our technology and the pace of daily life. I think that it gives us a chance to try to pretend to be in a different space in a different time. And that can be kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else like to say any more about that?
Yeah, I think with I don't know. I think we have to look at early music as just music. You know, it's just great music. Or we include scholarship, and scholarship is a really important part of how to best bring about this language. Like Christine said, in another, we're entering this other world, but it's a perfect opportunity for us to see our modern selves within that world, and how we go back and forth between something feeling like it's happening today, and that's part of the sense of improvisation that we get from this old music. But I think it should just be about making good music, and I think, sure, we do different things to try to bridge that gap between our world and theirs, but I think it mostly comes down to having feelings that people had hundreds of years ago and will have hundreds of years from now. And how can we establish meaning in those notes that they left, those little breadcrumbs they left for us on the music? How can we see that as meaningful emotional material that we can share with audiences today? I think that's really what this is about, and whether it was written 3 years ago or 100, or it'll be written next week. I think it really comes down to just human expression and feelings, and there you have it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Curtis, did you want to add to anything about that?
Yeah, just a quick riff on what both Chris and Christine said. I think a lot of audience members enjoy about early music, what I enjoy about early music, which is that it has just kind of a more accessibly laid back vibe to it. There's something a little less stuffy about an early music experience. And I find that not just in concert, but also in the rehearsal hall.
Yeah.
It's less regimented and rigid than a modern symphony orchestra.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, so Alan asks a question. Tell us who made your instruments. He said they all sound wonderful.
Hey, Alan. I know
Say
Alan.
that. Would like to answer that.
My instruments, my oboe is a copy of Denner by Toshi Hasegawa in the Netherlands. He built it for me about 2 years ago. And the recorder that I played is a Ganassi copy by Von Huda.
Okay.
And Christine, what about you?
My violin is a copy of a Collegio Giuseppe Testori instruments by Jason Visseltier in New York. And it came to me in 2011.
And the trumpet that I'm using for that particular program that we heard tonight was trumpet in the key of C. And I've tried I have a number of different instruments that I could use for this, but I find the dark quality that I can get from this one, made by Stephen Keevy, from the very last month of 1999 in England, I think really suits this repertoire better than other C trumpets that I've tried.
Okay. Well, we have Jalon joining us again. Nice to see you again, Jalon.
Nice to be back.
And there's actually a question. Go ahead. Oh, if you'd like to answer that too, please do.
The harpsichord that I played is actually modeled after
17th century style Italian harpsichords, which would have kind of made their way into Germany as well as Italian musicians moved north. And I'm not sure who originally made it. It's a kit instrument from Zuckerman harpsichords, but most recently it was finished and made to sound as beautiful as it does by David Calhoun of Seattle.
Oh, very nice. Let's see. I'm seeing if there's some other questions that are coming in. Oh, here's someone that's asking, how did you get the feel for Baroque ornamentation during your studies? Anyone would like to answer that?
Well, listening and watching my teachers ornamenting, Ingrid Matthews and Julie Andrzejewski are my two main teachers. And certainly attending concerts and watching other people and listening to other people play, also reading treatises and practicing the different examples. I took an ornamentation class in grad school. All those various ways of doing it and just doing it a lot and not being afraid to make a mistake so that you can just feel free with it. But for me, most of what I've learned has been, or what I feel most confident in, is what I've learned through trial and error and from watching my role models in the violin world.
Anyone else like to take a crack at that?
I would second what Christine said. It's been a little longer since I was in school, since she was, but I think also it's almost like when you learn a new language, you just keep practicing it and listening to people speak it and having conversations as we rehearse together. We're always essentially having a musical conversation with each other and going to a lot of concerts where the ornamentation is done artistically and stylistically. So just that exposure and then speaking the language over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that spokenness is so important, because another thing to consider, we often think of ornamentation as somehow separate from music, at least before we go down the path of studying early music. But really, the ornamentation thought process and mindset starts with, how can you bring that sense of spontaneity into all of the phrases that you play, whether or not they have ornamentation or they require you to add ornamentation, but to really take a look at how can you get the phrasing that's already written to seem as if it's.
And it looks like we have time for maybe one more question, and we do have one coming in from Bo. What exciting pieces are you all working on now?
Well, I am not working on it at this very moment because I had to retune my violin. But one of the things I've decided to do with this whole not quite so many gigs time is I'm learning some scordatura pieces that I usually can't play because I have one violin and I usually need my strings to be tuned normally. So I've been learning the Resurrection Sonata from the Rosary, the Mystery Sonatas.
I would love to hear your.
Well, I'll have to retune.
Yeah. Even on a video, it was just so incredibly interesting.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for your comments. I wasn't able to get to a place where I could respond, but thank you all so much for your kind comments.
No, it was beautiful, and I bet playing those, and especially as a trumpet player who doesn't have all of these amazing pieces that I could play just by myself. I need other people. Just not gonna work.
Well, I need other people too. The unaccompanied repertoire is wonderful, but
yeah,
but it's so wonderful to play with other people too.
Well, of course, but I especially during the time that we're living in right now, being able to play those unaccompanied pieces, I'm just a wee bit jealous.
Right. Yes. Just to be clear, though, the Resurrection Sonata does have a bass line.
Oh well, of course.
Oh well. Actually, I got out my
bass line.
Nice. I know, it's wonderful.
Right. It's trumpet player talking here about violin. I knew I should.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to add, Jalon?
Let's see. I've been working on a Bach harpsichord concerto and been working on some music with the potential for recording by not all the sons of Bach, but some of the music of the sons of Bach, and a little bit of contemporary music as well. So that's been fun.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for joining us tonight. And most of all, thank you for the absolutely beautiful music that you gave as a gift tonight to everyone, and to all the other musicians who had to leave a little bit early tonight. Just thank you so much for all of these beautiful gifts you've offered. And we look forward to hearing more from you as the season goes on and getting together again. And so I just hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Everyone, have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was a pleasure to have you, and we'll see you again soon. Good night, everyone.